It was only a few days ago where I made a video talking about how Star Wars and Marvel were starting to blame all of their failures on Disney. That when you have a brand like Disney, a failing brand, this is what you start to see. When you're failing across every single aspect of your business, whether it's the box office, whether it's theme parks, whether it's streaming, you're going to have all these different entities start to point the finger. Well, it's not my fault because this. It's not my fault because that. And so many people are pointing directly back to the head of the organization, Disney, as the reason that they're failing. Well, here we are, just a few days after I released this video talking about Lucasfilm and Marvel trying to pass all of the blame onto Disney and Bob Chapek. Well, now it looks like Pixar is starting to do exactly the same thing. When you look across all the animated movies that Disney really became so well known for, massive hits, everything Pixar did felt like it was a guaranteed box office and a critical hit. That's not so much the case anymore. In fact, we've seen a lot of box office bombs from Pixar. We saw something like Lightyear, Disney animation, not Pixar, but we saw Strange World also last year, colossal failure for them. And Elemental, despite everyone's insistence that what an incredible recovery at the box office, it still lost money for them at the box office. But one thing that was positive for Elemental were the numbers for Disney Plus, and that's what's leading the Pixar bosses to again point the finger and say Disney Plus is the reason why we're struggling. Disney undercut Pixar films to boost streaming service, says Pixar exec. And this is in an entire interview where one of the chiefs over at Pixar, Pete Docter, is talking a lot about the problems they've had, some of the recoveries they've seen, and where they think they went wrong. And surprise, surprise, they're putting a lot of the blame for some of their failures on the fact that they were forced to do things for Disney Plus. Just like what we heard from Marvel and from Lucasfilm, right? They made us announce things before they were ready. Well, Pixar's saying, well, they made people think about the streaming services. Well, we don't have to go to the theaters. We can just wait for it to come out on streaming. You know, we saw the failure of Strange World last year, one of the biggest flops. We also saw the failure of Lightyear. Both of those movies were marketed as woke piles of shit. There was a lot of messaging in both of those movies. At least that's the way it was advertised. That was the perception a lot of people had of them. And that's one of the big reasons they failed. Elemental, while it made an impressive comeback in the box office, still fell short of $500 million. With a production budget of $200 million, estimated marketing budget of around $100 million, this thing needed to hit $600 million at the box office to break even, especially with the massive international box office to domestic split that they had. They made so much more internationally than they did domestically. This thing did not break even despite the repeated insistence from so many people in the media and from Disney and Pixar themselves to try to convince people that it was a success. But one place it did get watched a decent amount, more so than a lot of other things that have been released for them lately, was over on Disney Plus. And although we should give it credit for doing well streaming numbers, minutes watch-wise when it comes to the Nielsen ratings, the real question is, did anybody sign up to Disney Plus for this? Did it keep anyone subscribed to Disney Plus for this? Keep in mind, all of this also happened when Disney was offering $1.99 subscriptions, $1.99 a month. That's how desperate they were to retain some people to Disney Plus when they were headed right up to the end of the fiscal year. Did they lose 20 million subscribers, 15 million subscribers this year? That remains to be seen. And now that Disney Plus success is what's leading Pixar to point the finger at Disney and say, you know, this is why it didn't do well at the box office. This is why all our things aren't doing well. You've trained people to just wait for streaming. According to Barnes, Docter placed the blame on Walt Disney execs who moved Pixar films from theatrical releases to Disney Plus releases. This is talking about during the pandemic. Barnes detailed, for a start, Docter said Disney had undercut Pixar as a big screen force by using its films to build Disney Plus. He pointed to Soul, Turning Red, and Luca all being released on Disney Plus instead of getting theatrical releases. There's been an overall shift in viewing habits as a result of COVID, but it's also specific to Disney Plus. We've told people, hey, all of this is going to be available to you on Disney. Not only did Docter claim Disney execs have screwed the pooch by putting Pixar films on Disney Plus, but he took some of the blame on himself, with Barnes stating, although not saying so directly, Mr. Docter also indicated, Mr. Docter is such a weird word, by the way, or a weird phrase, Mr. Docter also indicated that Pixar had perhaps drifted too far from its storytelling roots. Yeah, no shit, that might be the root cause of all of Disney's issues when you really get down to it. But here's the quote. I always felt Elemental would speak to a lot of people, so I'm happy it has. But we've also taken a look at the projects we're working on now, what kind of films we want to be making. I really think we want to double down on what allowed us to speak to audiences to begin with. Now, the idea that, the only reason this didn't make so much money at the box office is because people were waiting for it to come out on Disney Plus. I don't know if I buy that. We didn't see that was the case with Lightyear or Elemental or other failures like Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, even Flash over on Warner Brothers for the Max streaming franchise. That's not necessarily the case. These things aren't just failing because people want to wait for them to come out on streaming. That might be a part of people's viewing habits overall. That's just different. This is streaming now. That's the way it is. But to me, I just see it as another way for all these different elements, all these different arms of Disney to start pointing the blame. They want to put the blame on the people behind Disney Plus. That's what we saw with Marvel. That's what we saw with Star Wars. We heard they were pressured to make announcements they weren't ready for. Now Pixar is saying because the focus on streaming, it really undercut us theatrically. That's why these things are failing. This is what happens to a failing brand, to a failing company. When all things are going well, you don't see the blame being passed around like this. You don't see people trying to escape the responsibility of their decisions. This is what you see when a company is headed down and down and down and people don't see a way out. They start trying to make sure that they can be as distant as possible from why this thing was a failure. In the case of Pixar, instead of blaming the woke messaging, they're blaming Disney Plus. Let me know your thoughts about all this in the comments section below. Smash a like button, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications, share this video out there, and I'll talk to you later.